Hey everybody, today Rahdo runs through his top 10 games that are probably not going to be getting a run through anytime soon, which is kind of a sad topic for a run through. I mean, these are 10 games that Jen and I enjoy quite a bit for a wide variety of reasons, and yet it's unlikely they're going to make it in front of my camera other than this particular list in the near future. Why is that? Well, it's all about prioritization. Here's the deal. On any given month, any given week, often any given day, I'm buried under a mountain of games that I've got to do run-throughs for that have been provided to me by publishers as review copies of games. And so, if I'm sitting down to try and decide, okay, what am I going to film today? I can film Game A or Game B. If Game A is a publisher-provided review copy and Game B is some game that I picked up myself for fun just because I was out to get it, well, I'm going to have to prioritize the review copy first. And since they never stop coming in, every week new games show up at my door. I've always got this big backlog that I can barely keep up with. These 10 games, and there's more besides, but these are my 10 favorites, are probably just never going to see the light of day. Unless some Rahdo runs through backer out there who did my last crowdfunding campaign at the director level and therefore can decide what games I'm going to run through. If any of them want me to run through one of these, I'd be more than happy to do it. And by the same token, if anybody goes to request.rahdo.com, that is a geek list on Board Game Geek where any game you'd ever like to see me run through, hey, list it there and thumb it. And if enough people thumb that, it'll make it all the way to the top, my most requested game. Every month, whatever it is, I record my most requested games. So if you see one of these and you'd really like me to cover it in a run through, but you're not a direct level backer, go to the request.rahdo.com. Chances are it'll be on there, and thumb it and make your friends thumb it, and grade a thumbing campaign on Twitter or whatever it might be to get these things to climb their way up. But anyway, that is the way these might get covered, but for now, I'm going to assume they're not, and so I will begin the sad tale of woe that is these 10 lovely games that I'm probably not going to run through anytime soon, starting with number 10, Artus. Which, oh man, talk about starting sad. This is from Kramer and Kiesling, the game design duo, my favorite board game designer pair in the industry. And they always produce really good games, and Artus is no exception, although it's kind of lost to history now. It hasn't really kind of caught on. But this is a really clever game where players control a group of knights sitting at the round table. And what you are trying to do is maneuver your knights so they're sitting next to the king, because that's where the most prestige, i.e. victory points, is to be had. Or if not the king, then the princes. But everybody else is trying to do that too. And the interesting thing is, as I am playing cards, everybody has basically the same deck of cards, although you don't necessarily know what cards anybody has at any time. You're playing cards to maneuver your knights closer and closer. You might also be playing cards to change the nobility so that, oh, somebody who used to be a prince is now the king. And, I wasn't over next to the current king. I'm trying to make this guy king so that all my knights are sitting in the right place at the right time so they can score me a lot of points. But here's the tricky thing. In addition to moving my knights around to try and maneuver them and bump your knights out of the way as I try to get to the king, in addition to changing the royalty structure of this kingdom, I can also make the king himself move. And when that happens, the entire table, the entire round table, turns with him to face wherever he is. And so suddenly, all of the scoring of the table could just instantly change in the blink of an eye. And so this is a crazy game of tactics. You've got cards in your hand. You're saying, hey, if I move this and then I move this, these are going to combo really nicely. It's going to work out now. But then suddenly somebody else plays something that makes the whole table rotate 180 degrees. And like, oh, I guess I got to do something new now. Now, I've only ever played this as a two-player game, and there is some level of strategy you can build. You can get combos off of cards, but I would imagine at 3 or 4, as the player count gets higher, it becomes less strategic and more tactical. I don't know, I've only ever tried as a 2, but Jen and I definitely enjoy it. And one of the main reasons is, like I said, everybody has the same deck of cards they're using to control this situation, try and score as many points as possible. Cards either maneuver pieces around or change the relative value of pieces, or they score you points. There's a lot of, hey, play this card to score points now. And the interesting thing is, a lot of the point scoring cards are actually point losing cards. They're ones that say, hey, for every character, every one of your knights that's in this particular section of the table, lose points. You're like, why would I ever want to play that? Because you have to. The game isn't over until every player has played all of their cards. So sooner or later, you're going to have to play those nasty cards that will hurt you, but you try to time it so that they hurt you the least. But you're trying to do that at the same time. You're trying to manipulate everything so that your knights are in good positions to score lots of points. At the end of every turn, you draw cards back up. You either draw scoring cards or maneuvering cards or whatnot. So you want to get a bunch of these scoring cards so you have control, so that when the time is right, you can play them. But the more scoring cards you have in your hand, the less knight cards you have, so you can actually control the knights. It's a sharp game. It's very clever, very fast. It kind of, when I'm playing it, I'm thinking, we're knights of the round table, we dance wherever able, because everything's just crazy, cuckoo, chaotic as the table itself keeps spinning right out from underneath you. But hey, it's a Kramer and Kiesling game, and not surprisingly, it's very, very good. That's my number 10, Artus. And now let's talk about number 9, Eaten by Zombies, which, man, another sad one. This is a game that came out kind of in the early days of the deck builder craze, where everybody was trying to, emulate the success of Dominion. And Eaten by Zombies, I think in a lot of ways, was really ahead of the curve. It was doing some stuff that, people haven't thought of, and, they're becoming more and more common now, but Eaten by Zombies was there years in advance. And it's a really sharp game set in a very cartoony zombie apocalypse. It's basically a 50s Americana type overrun by zombies. And the interesting thing is, like deck builders, you've got your deck of supplies that you're trying to use to stay alive as more and more zombies show up on the scene. And every time you play, you're going to set up a bunch of piles of cards, much like Dominion, that you're going to be drafting to try and make your deck stronger and stronger. You'll get more and more weapons and supplies and food and stuff like that. But here's the deal. Every round, as part of the turn structure, more and more zombies are going to be coming out of a zombie deck. And on your turn, for you to be able to play cards as resources that let you buy other cards, the standard deck builder tropes. I'm going to play all these cards that let me buy a new card, put them in my deck gets better and better. To be able to play these cards, you have to use them to either run away from the current horde of zombies or fight off the current horde of zombies. And if you can successfully do that, then hooray! The cards I used for that action, I can now use to buy cooler, better, bigger stuff. And then the horde goes away one way or the other. But over time, the horde gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And every turn, there's going to be more zombies you have to either fight off or run away from. Fighting is the preferred way to go, because then you can use all those cards to buy. If you flee, when you're running away, then you're going to end up dropping some of your cards. Your deck starts deconstructing in front of you. And at the same time, more and more zombies are showing up in the horde and basically clogging up your deck. The interesting thing is, in the early part of the game, you're much more powerful than the zombies. They're very easy to deal with, and you're getting cool, really powerful items every time you play. But as the game goes on, the tables turn, and the zombies start outnumbering all the players, and our decks start getting ripped to shreds and filled up with more and more and more zombies, until eventually we have a hand where, there's nothing but zombies in my hand. I guess that's the end for me. And that's the way the game is designed. This is a competitive game where whoever survives the longest wins. So your early game, desperately trying to gather all these resources and equipment, because sooner or later you're going to get overrun, and the only thing you got to do is just survive a little bit longer than your opponents. It's very sharp. The art is really very clever and well done. It's not a gross, scary zombie apocalypse. It's a cute, cartoony, very sunny apocalypse as it happens. And it's a lot of fun and really very, very unique from most all the other deck builders on the market. That's number 9, Eaten by Zombies. And now let's talk about number 8, The Hanging Gardens, which is a lovely I was about to call it a tile laying game, but it's not. You're laying you're laying cards in the same way you would lay tiles in a tile laying game. Actually, they could have been tiles, but they were cards. And the interesting thing about this game is, as you're building up your tableau to try to make the best hanging, the Gardens of Babylon, the Hanging Gardens, you can play your cards above and below each other, so that old cards might cover up new cards you're playing, and new cards might cover up portions of old cards. And you're doing this to try to jigsaw puzzle together sets of different types of buildings and locations that you can then score by claiming. And the interesting thing is, every time you build up a nice little set of a particular type of space, and you put one of your little pyramid-y things on it to score it, that then kind of restricts you, because up until you do that, up until you're scoring, you're pretty free with how you want to play your cards, on top of each other, below each other, with all the semi-stacking and all this kind of stuff you can do. But once you put one of these buildings down to claim land for scoring purposes, that limits you, because now you can't build on top of those spaces anymore. And so the more points you score, the tougher it becomes to continue to build. It's a really sharp game, and it's interesting. More recently, within the last year or two, a new trick-taking game came out called Honshu that got a lot of positive attention. A lot of people really dig Honshu. And Honshu does the same basic kind of, oh, look, laying tiles on top and below each other and all that, or not tiles, cards. But for my money, the Hanging Gardens always did it better. It's why I'm not that big on Honshu. I prefer Hanging Gardens. It's a really sharp game, very fun, neat, puzzly game that you can teach to just about anybody. It's a blast, and it's a shame it doesn't get more love, and it won't be for me anytime soon. That was number 8, Hanging Gardens. Now on to number 7, Karnag. This is a very funky reverse tower defense game, for lack of a better term. It's kind of hard to describe. It's a mystical forest fantasy setting where in the middle of the board there is this black chasm that monster after monster after monster are coming out of and streaming to the edges of the board as fast as they can via some very simple pre-programmed movement system that they follow, and they're trying to escape and destroy the world. We are the druids who are working to try to stop this onslaught from the underworld. But the interesting thing is, this is not a cooperative game. It is a competitive game where players are all doing their best to be the best demon slayer saver of the world. And the interesting thing is, your druids don't get to move around freely into the board and directly fight all these little monsters. Instead, they move around on the outskirts of the board. The closest thing I can liken it to, I don't know if people are old enough to remember a classic arcade game from the 80s called Tempest. That's what it felt like to me playing this game. It's kind of like a competitive, which Tempest was a competitive game of Tempest where more and more guys are just streaming out and we're zipping around on the outskirts trying to fight them off and score as many points as possible. It's really sharp. There's nothing else quite like it other than old classic 80s arcade games. And probably the most interesting about it is the action selection mechanism. Every round there are a bunch of action cards. I think there's 5 that are put out on display. Each card has 2 different actions you can do on it. And the first thing we do is a worker placement phase where players send their workers, say, oh, I'm going to do this action, and oh, I want to do that action, but somebody else took that one, so I'll do the other one. And then after they've all been taken, we're kind of programming how we're actually going to do the fighting portion of the round, which is when we fight everything off based on how we did the worker placement portion. It's a really sharp game, very puzzly, because the board itself, it's kind of a maze that these monsters are moving around, and you can kind of anticipate how they're going to move. And not only do you just directly attack them, but you can also create barriers that redirect them to make them move in different directions, so they'll go where you want them to go, so you can attack them. And it's a sharp, neat game, again, unlike anything else out there. And it was a blast. That was number 7, Karnag. And now on to number 6, PAX. From designer Bernd Eisenstein, who is the designer of one of my favorite games of all time, my top 10 title, Peloponnese. Bernd, a few years ago, made a neat little card game called Pax, which is about the slave revolt in ancient Rome. Players, this is a competitive game where each player controls a faction of Spartacus's slave revolt, trying to fight off the yoke of oppression of the Romans, but competing to be the best at it. So we, so that we get the favor of Spartacus, the best. And we're doing that every turn by playing cards to these different depots. They're represented by these little tents, and there's a bunch of depots out, and over time, more and more cards fill up in these depots. And these cards represent resources, military characters, money, ships, all kinds of stuff. And so these depots fill up, and eventually there's enough stuff in there that you want to grab all the cards out of there and add them to your tableau in this kind of set collection engine building kind of a game. The depots that don't get taken by players get taken by Rome itself. Because as I'm trying to build up my forces and Jen's trying to build up her forces, we're both trying to be the most successful in this slave revolt, the Romans are building up their forces too. And the Romans, the forces are in part created by us because we're the ones creating and filling up these depots with resources and leaving some of them for the Romans. It's a neat system, but probably the coolest thing about this game is, like I said, it's competitive. We're kind of working semi-cooperatively because, of course, we need to overthrow the Romans. We don't want the Romans to win. But as you're playing along, if you get to the point where you think, you know what, I don't think we're going to be able to fight the Romans. I don't think we're going to be able to put them off. Or even if we do beat the Romans, I don't think I'm going to make it. I think you're going to be the one at the top of the totem pole here. You know what? I'm done rebelling. I'm going to throw in my lot with the Romans. And then suddenly, a player can basically betray everybody else and start working towards a Roman win and just shift things up radically in the middle of the game. And then the remaining players, well, God, now we got to take them on ourselves. It's really clever. It's no kind of secret betrayal or anything. Everybody knows you've done this. Oh, how could you betray the movement as you decide to throw in with them? And well, that's okay. We'll take them down and we'll take you down too. It's a sharp game, really cool, neat engine building / set collection game with some cool twists. That was number 6, Pax. And now on to number 5. Wurfel Bohnanza, or Bonanza the dice game, which I don't believe has been released out of Germany, which is why it's called Wurfel Bohnanza, But anyway, this is, like I said, a dice version of designer Uwe Rosenberg's modern classic Bonanza, which to this day I have still never played because it requires at least 3 players. But Wurfel Bohnanza can be played with 2. And it's a very, very neat game that, from my understanding, pretty much has almost nothing in common from a gameplay point of view with Bonanza. There's none of the whole, I got to hold my cards and play them in a specific order, or, and grow beans. None of that stuff happens. Instead, it's a set collection game where on your turn, you're rolling dice, hoping to get the right results because you've got a scorecard that says, I want this combination, or I want this combination of beans when I roll. And, Yahtzee style, you can keep re-rolling to try and get better dice until you say, okay, yeah, this is what I'm going to take as I work my way up the progress of my score thing. Okay, at the bottom of my card, I needed 2 blues. Okay, I keep rolling. I got 2 blues. Okay, fine. I'll lock those in and work my way up the scorecard so I can score this whole thing. But here's the thing. On your turn, every time you roll the dice so that you can hopefully get the bean symbols that you need, everybody else around the table is very, very interested in what you're doing because they can use your dice as well. And so, while you want to roll and roll and roll to get the perfect combination of the exact dice you need, the more you roll, the more you're potentially rolling dice that don't help you, but help your opponent. So, do you go for only a couple of rolls and, I didn't get as much as I wanted, but if I keep going, I might help you more than help me? That's actually really, really cool. This is, there are so many Yahtzee-style dice games in the industry, and this one really stands out from the crowd because Whether it's your turn or not, you really care about the outcome. You are watching like a hawk every single roll, looking for those opportunities. Plus, on top of that, there's another neat thing. There's this kind of push your luck element because once you've scored a certain number of lines on your scorecard, you could turn it in for a point. Or you could say, you know what, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to try and get another line of this completed to go for 2 points or even 3 points. So do you go for that, or do you stop earlier and start building a new one? Lots of neat little things. This push your luck element in the gameplay as you more roll and roll dice because you might be helping your opponents more than you makes Wurfel Bohnanza a very cool little dice game. That's number 5. And now on to number 4, Nautilion, the latest game in the Oniverse series. From designer Shady Torby. You know, I've already done run-throughs for all of his other games, which is what makes this so sad that Nautilion, because I ended up buying it myself, because I really enjoy his games, will probably not get a run-through anytime soon. So, you know, Onorim and Castellion and Sylvian. Maybe someday Nautilion will join you, but for now, this is going to be all I have to say on it. This is, like all the Oniverse games, it's first and foremost designed as a solo game, but you can play it as a 2-player cooperative game. And like every time, Shady comes up with interesting ways to just make a couple of little rules tweaks that suddenly make the co-op game very, very interesting and compelling as well. And now, the interesting thing about Nautilion is, at its heart, it is a roll and move game. But Shady, the designer, basically set out to try to prove, you know what, roll and move doesn't have to be a dirty word. You can do cool and interesting things with roll and move as well. And the way this works is, every round, you're going to roll 3 dice. One of the dice is going to be used to move you forward, as you try to make progress to defeat the evil ship that's coming to destroy the world, as you try to move your little submarine, your Nautilion, forward. However far you move forward, if you assign the right dice and land in the right spot, you can actually collect the chip that you land on in this little randomly generated board you're trying to move down to add to your submarine to make yourself more powerful. By the same token, one of the dice you roll every round has to go to the evil ship that is moving closer and closer to the other end of the line. I'm started at one end of the line and I'm trying to move forward. The evil ship starts at the other end and is trying to move in the opposite direction. I've got to get to and defeat that Nautilion before the evil ship makes it the way. And then the other die, the third die, ends up going on the lighthouse. And you have to be very careful about what dice you put on there because that could cause problems for you as well. So every round you're rolling 3 dice and you have to decide, how am I going to use these 3 dice? Because maybe I want to move myself really far forward, but if I use this other die, if I only move a little ways forward, I can get the perfect token to level up my submarine. It's sharp, it's fun, it works really well. Interestingly, I think of all of his games, this one, it works well as a co-op game too, but it's not quite as, I think this one is better, demonstrably better as a solo game than it is as a co-op. Although Gen I still enjoyed it as a co-op game as well. It has a lot of gameplay for a very, very small footprint, very fast, fun solo game, fun co-op game, and like all the other Oniverse games, comes with a metric boatload of different variants you can turn on and off to really change the feel of the game from session to session. It's very neat. It's my number 4, Nautilion. And now on to number 3. We are at number 3 now, right? I think we are. That is Trollhalla from Alf Siegert. And this is interesting. The artist is Ryan Lockett. This was a game that Ryan was the artist on before he became super hot board game designer, artist extraordinaire. This is one of his older titles. A lot of people don't know he was also artist on a lot of the original Dominion cards as well. But anyway, enough about Ryan's art. Let's talk about Alf's design. What is this game? It's kind of a Viking raiding and looting and pillaging style game, but it's a very light, family-friendly game as well. And they do that by casting players in the role of trolls instead of Vikings to get away from certain historical, darker passages of human history or whatnot. Basically, each player has their own Viking or troll Viking longship where they're doing set collection. You're moving around from island to island trying to capture certain types of livestock or certain types of prisoners and put them on your ship to score points. But what's interesting is everybody kind of shares control of these 3 long ships that are on the board. It's a set collection / area control game, I guess, because on your turn, one of the main things you're going to do is you're going to take your little Viking ships, I'm going to call them Vikings. It's hard to call, or your little troll chips. You're either going to put those troll chips on the board itself to create kind of this route building thing, because wherever if you put your trolls in the right places, that can determine where the ships are going to sail. If you really want to collect a particular type of animal or princess or something like that, and it's on this island down to the south, you might want to put one of your chips onto the board to open up the path so that, say, the blue ship can sail south to go get that. So you're either putting your guys on the board to basically determine where the ships are going to go. They're kind of like navigators. Or you're putting your guys onto the actual ships themselves that will move around the board. And that's the area control thing, because if I get my guy on all 4 spaces of a given ship, when that ship eventually moves to an island, I'll collect all 4 tokens, all 4 treasures that are on that island. But you might grab a couple of spots on this little red boat that's going to move to the center island. So I'm going to end up getting 2 and you're going to end up getting 2. Or the troll chief, the war chief, might, which represents kind of a dummy player, he might grab some seats on the boat as well. And so anyway, when the ship eventually has all its seats full, because we're either putting our trolls on the board to indicate where the ships are going to go, or we're putting them on the ships so we can grab stuff when the ship pulls in. After you've done that, you're going to roll a die that determines which ship is going to move. There's 3 ships. The orange, the red, and the blue ship. One of them is going to move every turn and potentially grab a bunch of stuff. If it's full, if the ship is full, it's going to move. Otherwise, if it doesn't move, that means the troll chief is going to start filling up and taking spaces that players could have. I'm making this probably sound more complex than it is. It's a really simple, straightforward game. On your turn, you're either going to open up routes, and by the way, when you're doing that, you're also getting to draw weather cards. And the more of those you have, the more game-changing effects you can use. You're either trying to grab spaces on these ships, or you're trying to try and determine where the ship is going to go. But then you never know for sure when that ship is going to move, because it's the roll of the die that determines which ship is going to activate. And while we're doing all this, we're trying to get into the right positions on the right ships and get the right ships to the right islands so we can collect the tokens that we're trying to collect to score lots of points. It's really, really clever. Very fast, silly, light, fun, and yeah, we really like it a lot. Although, again, probably not going to be in a run through anytime soon. That was number 3, Trollhalla. And then we move on to number 2. Okay, sorry folks, I just kind of got interrupted there a little bit. Another package showed up. Yet another game I got to try and find time to film. So once again, my number 2 gets pushed that much farther into the future. It's Istanbul, das Wurfelspiel, or Istanbul, the dice game. The second, the dice game on this list. And like Bonanza, the dice game before it, this is not one that, this is one basically, it kind of is set in the same setting and uses some of the same iconography, but it's really a different beast than the original Istanbul, which was a very, very clever pick up and deliver game as you moved around and kind of puzzled your way how to best navigate an exotic market full of spices and carpets and stuff like that to get a lot of rubies. You're still trying to get rubies in Istanbul, the dice game, but pretty much everything else has changed because now your assistants are 5 dice. And on your turn, you're going to roll those 5 dice, and whatever those dice show up, that's going to determine what you can do. After you roll your dice, you get to use them to do 2 actions. And everybody has a little cheat sheet that reminds you what those actions are. And for the most part, they are turn those dice into matching goods. So you can start building up a collection of jewelry or carpet or whatever it might be. Or use those dice to get more money. Or use those dice to draw special cards that will give you special powers. That most of the time, actually I think all the time, you end up using immediately. And there's a little bit of push your luck there because the more of those you draw at once, you only be able to play one, the better a shot you have of getting something that's going to work well for you. Although an interesting thing about those special power cards is a lot of the time when you draw them, if you use them, hey, they'll give you something, but they give everybody else at the table something as well, which is always very, very nice. But the interesting thing is, so you roll these 5 dice and you're like, okay, well, based on this roll, I could do this action and this action, or I could do a weaker version of this and a stronger version of this action, or I could do, there's a surprising amount of variety. Although, if the dice don't go your way, everybody has access to these clear crystals. You can use them, you can discard them to re-roll as many dice as you want. Otherwise, you don't get to re-roll at all, and you just got to make use of what you've got. So this is a game, unlike a lot of these style of, hey, roll and roll and roll and roll and try to get, okay, no, roll. Do what you can. And a big part of the game is building up over subsequent turns to get a big collection of things so you can all at once trade them in for a ruby, because everybody's racing to grab rubies as fast as possible, or trade them in for a special power tile that will then be something that helps you for the rest of the game, or or if instead of collecting a lot of resources, you might just be collecting a lot of money to try to buy the rubies right out. So that was in the original. I mean, in the original Istanbul, you were either trying to get goods to get rubies or money to get rubies. Those are the two primary ways, and then there were other ways to do it here and there. That's still here, but otherwise, it's a very, very different game, and it's a sharp, fun, fast-playing light game. And I really kind of like the fact that unlike most dice games on the market, this one says, yeah, you know what, you don't get that many opportunities to roll and re-roll and re-roll. You roll and you make the best with what you got. So it has kind of more of a slow burn build-up feel that, again, makes it feel very, very unique. And Jen and I have definitely enjoyed it. From Rudiger Dorn, my number 2, Istanbul, the dice game. And finally, the sad tale of my number 1 game, Steam Donkey. Oh, what a weird, wonderful, wacky title this is. This is set in Victorian England, but this kind of alternate steampunk Victorian England, where players are trying to run beach resorts and try to collect and bring as many tourists as possible. Because the more tourists come to your resort after you've built it up, the more opportunities you have to build more stuff. And it becomes this kind of this building engine. But it's really interesting. So everybody starts with a hand of cards, and this is that kind of game where, hey, if I want to build this Ferris wheel or this hotel or whatever, it shows that, okay, well, I have to discard a certain number of cards from my deck or from my hand. I don't want to discard anything. I want to build all these things. Well, nope. You're going to have to discard 3 to build that thing. But once you've got that fancy hotel that's either in a park or in downtown or it's on the beach, because there's 3 rows you're building your stuff to, which has definitely an impact. Because there are certain tourists who want to go to the beach. There's certain tourists who want to go to town, and there's certain tourists who want to go to the park. And at any given time, there's 5 tourists on display. And you can see what types of tourists they want. So you're discarding cards, throwing cards away painfully to build buildings to attract those tourists that are on display at any given time. And so you're building up, making those hard sacrifices, grabbing those tourists, and when you do take them out of the display, you put them on the individual buildings because they're now visiting your seaside attraction. And what ultimately happens is, I should have said right up front, all the cards in this game are two-sided. On the front, you actually see what building or attraction or whatever it might be this card represents. And on the back side represents the tourists who will come to visit. So, like I said, it might be a beach attraction or a park attraction, but when you flip it on the other side, it might be a tourist who wants to go to the park, or it might have been a tourist who wants to go downtown. There's no direct correlation between the two. So anyway, I've got the cards in my hand. This represents buildings I could build. I can see the tourists who are on the train station. There's the 5 on display, and I want to build to attract them to my buildings. Once they've made it to my buildings, that's after they've done that and they've had their nice visit, that's when those cards come into my hand and convert from tourists. I flip them over and finally find out, hey, what new building do I have that I could build? Because, just because I put a nice beachgoer in my beach hut doesn't mean that when I eventually get to claim that card and flip it over, it doesn't mean it will be a beach building. It might be a park building. And I had no idea this was going to... So do I want to be able to build this park building? What other tourists are going to be available in the future? It's this very interesting, quirky economy. The gameplay of this game is as quirky as the art and the setting is, with this crazy steampunk world, even though the places we're building are based on real historical vacation destinations for English people of the Victorian age. So it's this crazy, quirky combination of stuff, and Jen, I enjoy it quite a bit. I always love card games where I got to sacrifice cards to play new cards, but most of the time, hey, you just eventually draw more cards. now you got to work to get those cards into your hand by satisfying all these people. It's really sharp. It's really neat. It's quite unlike anything out there. It's Steam Donkey, my #1 very sad game that I probably won't be filming anytime soon because I bought it myself. And that's it, folks. Yeah, top 10. There are more. As always, I'll be revisiting this topic in an upcoming podcast, which you can always find at podcast.rahdo.com, to maybe talk about a few more games that very sadly sit on my shelf, unloved by my camera, and but really deserve to see the light of day. But otherwise, thanks for watching. Have a very, very nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.